what you learned so far was writing a query to get the data from a database that's built. Basically, you created the table, you put the data into the table, and now you are retrieving data from the table. So let's go one step back now, and you're in the situation where the tables are created. So you've got a scenario, you came up with the design, you basically have got all the entities, attributes, relationships, primary key, foreign keys all set. You know what type of data will be stored in each attribute. So what you do is you go and create the table. All right, imagine it's done. How to create the table is what we'll teach you later on. But imagine that's done, and the tables are empty. The tables are empty, no data in it. You want to put the data now into the tables. So the queries you learned to write was applying a query or writing a request or query to tables that contain data. So here is the empty tables. You want to put the data in it. What's the command? The command is insert. Fairly easy. Insert into, you give the table name, which table you want to insert the data, and then the list of attributes that's in that table, and the values that you want to insert in each of these attributes. Sometimes you just want to insert maybe values into two of the attributes, not all the attributes, or one of the attributes of the table. So you can do that. The column list is optional, so you can give a list of attributes in here, in front of the table, and then the values, followed by the value list, or you can just ignore the column list. And what happens is, if you do this, you'll see with the example, you put the values, the first value that you supply here in front of the value in the first attribute of your table, second one in the second attribute, and so on and so forth. So if you define a number of columns or attributes, it should match the number of values. So for each column you're defining, you should have a value. So here, have a look at one example. Insert a new row into a staff table. Supply data for all columns, for mandatory columns. So here it is. The mandatory columns in this case, for example, was first name, last name, position, and salary. Let's say gender, date of birth was not mandatory. And then, so what we say, insert into the table you want to insert the data to, the columns that you want to insert data to, then followed by the word values, and then the values that you want to insert in each of these attributes or columns. SG44 will go to the staff number, and goes to the first name, Jones goes to the last name, assistant goes to the attribute position, 8,100 goes to salary, B003 goes to the branch. And of course B003 is a string of letters or characters, that's why it's in the single quote. So if you're inserting values into table, that's how it is done. Insert into the name of the table, the list of columns that you want to insert value to, followed by the word values, and then the list of values that you're inserting into the column. With the insert, you don't have, if you remember, the column list is optional, so you don't have to specify the column list, but you've got to be very careful. Let's say, just say insert into a staff, and then you say the following values. What will happen is, the first value that you specify here, SG44, will go to the first attribute in your table, and goes to the second attribute in your table. Jones goes to the third attribute in the table. So that's how it works. So provided you supply the values in the order you want to be inserted in the table, you don't need to provide the attribute names. But to make sure, it's best to always provide the attribute names and then the values. So then you know exactly SG44 goes to staff number, Ann goes to first name, Jones goes to second, last name, etc. So be careful with that. Sometimes you want to update the values. So with the normal queries you cannot update. So if you want to update a value, an attribute, a set of attributes, you can do that. So you use the word update, the table name, set the columns that you want to the values that you want. So for example, you can say update the staff, set first name to Lee, last name to Jones, and where a staff number is SG45 or whatever. For a staff SG45, you can do this. So you do update, change the values of the columns, and you can have a condition. So to make sure that you apply to certain row of the table. If you want to apply the changes to the all values of those attributes in the whole table, you don't need to use a condition. So condition is optional. If you don't use where in the update, all your updates that you're doing will be applied to all the attributes that you specify to the table that you specified. Remember that the new values that you're updating or adding or updating the values should match the type of values that that attribute can have. For example, if you've got an attribute first name and that's a character, so when you're updating, it should be a string of characters. Yeah. So if you're updating the date of birth, then it has to be a date. You know, I don't know when you would update the date of birth. If somebody mistakenly entered your date of birth and you find out and you say, this is not my date of birth, maybe they have to update it, then it has to be day, month, year, for example. Here it is. That's what's happening right now. Give all the staff a 3% pay increase. That's what's happening in Australia, yeah, for some people, 3%. So you just basically say, update the staff, set salary to the new value. Salary multiplied by 1.03. So basically 1.03, just 3% added to this. That's how you do it. Right? So nothing complicated, just the mathematics part of it. And that will update every single person salary. Give all managers a 5% pay increase. Only those that are managers. So you cannot just say update the staff set salary by 5%. Increase by 5%, you have to use a condition where position is manager. So only those managers get 5%, everybody else gets 3%. Promote David Ford, a staff number SG14 to manager and change his salary to £18,000. That must be very old. Yeah. So the condition is the staff number is SG14 and then the name is David Ford. So update staff position to manager, updating him to manager, increase his salary, hopefully to 18,000. I don't know what was his salary before, and then David Ford, and because we know he's a staff number, we just say so staff number equals SG14, or I had to say where first name is David and last name equals Jones. Delete, very rarely we delete. Actually, I usually don't teach it, the delete, but it's good to know. You usually don't delete anything. Yeah, there's no reason to delete. I don't know why you would delete. I can't think of any situation where you would delete an attribute. Yeah, when the customer dies, yeah, or the house gets demolished, it's true, yeah. You might just have an attribute say demolished or still available, or deceased or not. Anyhow, or you just delete. Fair enough, the customer is not anymore, you just delete. But sometimes you want to know how many of your customers are dead. You know, how often my customers die, you know, how fast they are dying. You know, I know, it's very unusual that you want to know, but if you have a funeral place and you're selling insurance for funeral plans, you want to know how fast they're dying. Yeah, people are dying. That's one option. You know, it just depends on which database you're working with. Very strange, I know, but that happens. Okay, let's move on to this delete. So delete all products that have a price less than $100. That's happened. That can happen. Yeah, because they're not going to offer that anymore. Yeah. Yeah, true, right? So anything less than $100, so delete from product, price, and E is missing, my apologies to you. is less than $100. There we go. So that can happen. It's happening. You could say delete all the products that are less than $1. So that can happen because they're not going to offer anything for $1. Delete all the records from the product table. So if you say delete from product, so it deletes all the rows. So be very careful with delete. When you type delete, just be a bit careful. Otherwise, you have a difficulty getting the data back from your backup files, or if you have a backup file.